Good afternoon, sociology students. I trust everyone is well and doing well during this quarantine period. I had the distinct honor of having a special guest today. We have Fabiola Ramirez joining us from Fresno, California. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to meet with my students. I imagine at a time like this, you're probably pretty busy with news stories.
Yeah, I do stay really, really busy. I actually just sent in the last video for a newscast, so it's quite a busy time. But you have to do what you have to do, especially in a time like this. Working from home, actually.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to start our discussion. And before I start, I just want to give a little bit of background of where the Social Talk with the Doc speaker series started. It was this idea of providing students with the opportunity to connect with industry professionals, to gain exposure to their careers, as well as gain insight into that individual's life experiences. And that's an essential part of the field of sociology, where we start to learn about a person's history, while we start to learn about a person's life experience to begin to understand who that person is. And that ties into the sociological perspective. This idea that we enter new situations or new life experiences with essentially a blank canvas, and we allow our interactions to paint that canvas. That being said, I have a few questions I want to ask. So if you're ready, let's get started.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, perfect. So do you mind sharing some information about where you grew up? What's your ethnicity? What's your religion? What was your childhood like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I am a Latina, Mexican. I was born in Mexico, which is something that actually a lot of people don't even know. I do work in the news industry, and for the majority of the day, I have to be speaking English. But little do they know that I actually didn't speak English or learn English until I was the age of 11 years old. That's when I learned my first word, which I think was like apple or something like that. So I was born and raised in Zacatecas, Mexico. When we were really, really young, my dad would come to United States to work all the time. And let me tell you, that was hard. It was hard growing up in Mexico. We grew up in a small little rancho. And a majority of the time, I didn't get to really see my dad. My mom was working a lot. Grew up without any schooling, any education, or anything like that. During a time, my dad, when he would go back, he would always tell my mom that he wanted us to have an education and that he would see kids here in the United States going to school, and he thought that was great, and he wanted us to do the same thing. At the time, it was very difficult for my dad to make that happen. But in a little bit of time after that, he was able to get his residency. And when he got his residency, he applied for us to get a residency here. And so within a few years of, putting in the work and the money, because it was really expensive, we were able to, get our residency as well, come to the United States. It was very, very difficult. I still remember everything. I still remember the day we got here. It was like a foreign, country. It was a foreign language. It was just nothing I ever imagined. Um, Everything was just so different. I mean, I can't even explain to you. Like, I had never even seen a TV in my life. So coming to the United States and seeing a TV, seeing, the world and seeing different ethnicities was mind blowing to me. I'm like, wait, we're not all the same color. We're not all made the same. Like, there's different ethnicities. So it was a big culture shock for me and language shock. And so, yeah, I was about 11 years old when I came to the United States for the first time. And lived in Atwater, California, which is in the Central Valley. That's where, I went to school, middle school and high school. And that's where I started learning my English. That's where I started progressing. And let me tell you, learning a language from scratch is hard, especially since your parents don't speak any English. You have to rely on, I feel like, yourself at times, because my teacher didn't even speak Spanish and I didn't speak English. So that alone was just a huge, huge struggle. So that was kind of like my growing up. It's like a roller coaster, I say, because I went from being in Mexico in a rancho, where I was like a farm girl, And we used to, like have chickens and, pigs and cows, and didn't really know the city life, and then came to the United States and just was a completely different life. I mean, when I watched the movie Elf, I feel like I can relate because it was like a whole new world. And it was all because my dad wanted us to come to the United States, because he wanted us to have an education, because he knew that if we stayed in Mexico, it was going to be a lot harder because we lived in a rancho, so there was no schools nearby. I remember one year we tried to go to school and we had to walk like an hour and a half to even get to school. So we would only go like 2-3 times a week, if that. And it just wasn't doable. School was just not something that we could do. And so that's why now that I was able to go to school and then to college, and my two sisters have their master's degree, I see the power of education. And to me, education is so important. There's just that's something that nobody can take away from you. And I'm such a huge advocate for people to do higher education, because you can. And in a lot of countries, you can't do that. So that's kind of like a little bit about myself and my upgrowing and my story, you can say.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I have a question about, coming to the United States at 11 years old. I think that's what, fifth, sixth grade. Am I correct?
Uh, I think it was
Something around
third
that age range, right?
grade.
Was it third grade? Yeah, I'm not too sure what age range, but that being said, what was your motivating factor to persist? I mean, if you were not in necessarily a formalized education system while living in Mexico, and then making that transition to a formalized education system and having to, I guess, learn the American education system, what motivated you to persist from semester to semester at such a young age?
A lot of it had to do with my parents, because I knew how important it was to them and I didn't want to disappoint them. I really wanted to try my best. But at the same time, I felt like if I don't go to school and I don't persevere and I don't work hard and I don't learn the English language and I don't go to college, then what am I doing? What was this whole big sacrifice of leaving my life behind that I had in Mexico for, if I wasn't going to pursue that? So it was always in the back of my head, like, this is my chance to be someone, do something. Because I'm not saying this would have happened, but in a lot of, in Mexico, when you're from a small little rancho, you usually have only one option. And that is to get married with a guy who's hopefully not from the rancho, but from the city or the United States, and fixes you papers to come to the United States, or, gets you out of the rancho and gets you a nice home. And then you get a family. That was really what was expected for us. And that is what happened to a lot of my cousins, because education was not an option. So having all those things in the back of my mind made me continue doing, really good in school and trying to be the best kid possible, because I knew that if I didn't, then all of those sacrifices would have been for nothing.
Thank you for sharing that. I hear a similar story from a lot of my students who are first generation Americans, and or some of my students who are dreamers, right? That motivation to not disappoint their parents, to not insult the sacrifices that their parents have made to provide them with a better life in the United States. And this just further illustrates that commitment to education that we've seen within the Latino Hispanic community, which has been growing on an annual basis, especially among Latinas. Right, we're seeing an enormous amount of Latinas not only earning bachelor degrees, but also, as you mentioned with your sisters, right, master degrees or other graduate degrees or professional degrees. So I appreciate you sharing that information. Now, you graduate middle school, you graduate high school, you go to college, and where do you go to college?
I went to Fresno State. I wanted to stay close enough to my family. Just again, I'm really tight, close to my family. My family's everything. So I wanted to be close to them, but also I still wanted to get that college experience where I moved away. So came to Fresno State and loved the campus, loved that it was so diverse. There was a lot to do. There was a lot to get involved in. And I'm that kind of person that always likes to get involved and get to know different people, especially for the same reason that in Mexico, we didn't really have the opportunity to get to meet other people or other cultures. So when I went to college, that was my chance to do that. And I graduated from Fresno State in 2016. I double majored and got a minor. My double major was in broadcast journalism, which is what I do now with reporting and journalism. And then I also got a major in multimedia so that I could be able to do videos, have that as a backup. And then I minored in Spanish because obviously that was a given. I mean, I spoke English all my life, so I wanted to make sure I got that minor in there. Because, you know, having a minor, especially in a second language, it can boost your opportunities for jobs.
Certainly. Now, what was that experience like as a first generation college student? Were you nervous? Were you excited? What was your first day at Fresno State like?
Well, let me go back to the day before my first day of school. I cried when I left my parents' house. I think that that's the hardest thing for any, you know, student. I guess I'm coming from a Latino perspective and a female perspective, like leaving your parents home for the first time ever, and you know that tomorrow you're not going to see them, and now you have to live on your own. I cried. It was scary, but it was like exciting because it was a new beginning. Being a first generation student at a college campus can be very uh, difficult and scary, but something I always tell everyone, especially to the kids that I talk to in high school, is that college has so many programs to help first generation students, to help Latinos, to help females. I mean, there's a program for everything. And I think that that's the important thing going into college is, and when you're in college, is look for those resources, look for those programs. There's a program called CAMP, and right away it was for migrant families, and right away I was like, oh well, my parents work in the fields, perfect, that's my program right there. EOP was a first generation program. I was like, perfect, maybe they can give me free binders and free pens, I got it, I'm joining that club. You know, you just get involved, join as many things as you can, and just try to make yourself part of that environment, because you for the first time kind of start seeing a lot of different generations, different you know, types of people, different ethnicities. And it's again that point where you get to experience and learn from other people. So I always tell everyone, like, college is an amazing experience if you take advantage of it, if you learn from others, if you give yourself the chance to do something with it and not take it for granted.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the shout out for EOP. I think that's a phenomenal program. And I encourage all of my students who qualify for EOP or any of these student support programs to participate, because the support and the resources are phenomenal, and they can make a difference between, increasing student retention rates, or unfortunately, if a student doesn't take advantage of these resources, the potential to increase attrition rates. And so, thank you for giving EOP a shout out. And I'm going to make sure to share this with my colleagues about both LA Harbor and Rio Hondo, who are part of the EOP program, or we call it at the community college level, EOPS. So I appreciate that. So as a sociologist, I have a fascination with culture and culture's impact on how an individual develops their sense of self. And so I wanted to see if you could provide us some insight into, a little bit about your culture. I identify as Mexican, right? So we do have, I'd imagine, some similarities, but at the same time, there are individual cultures for each family unit. And I don't know if you have children, but for you, right, once you have children, once you get married, whatever it may be, you're going to develop a culture within your family unit, and then your kids, and so on and so forth. That being said, can you provide some insight into the culture and maybe some of the traditions that your family engages in?
You know, when it comes to culture, it's a very tough topic for me because um, I guess growing up in Mexico, because we did live in a rancho, we were very traditional, very, did things a certain way. And then I'm not going to lie to you, I came to United States and I had to, in a way, blend in. So unfortunately, I struggled through my years in middle school where I felt like I couldn't share my culture as much. And I felt like a lot of my traditions that we used to do, a lot of the culture, a lot of like the pride diminished in middle school because of the fact that I was scared of not being fully accepted. And I still had a very, very heavy accent. And so all these things as a kid, I mean, I was a kid. I didn't really understand what was really going on. And I was in, grew up in Atwater, California, which is, a lot of, you know, a little bit of Hispanic people or Latinos. And so there was times where I struggled with that. Um, and then at some point, I don't know, I guess at one point I just told my dad about it and I said, look, I'm struggling. I don't know. Like, should I be showing off my pride? Should I not? I was like, cause I was going to high school and I was like, there's this like folklorico class. And I remember when we were little, like we used to see them when we used to go to the pueblo. And I'm not sure if I should join this. And we had to, sit down and talked about exactly what our culture is, what our traditions are, what is the difference between what we used to do in Mexico and what we did here, because a lot of it I was too young to remember. And I think at that point, that's when I realized, like, wait a minute, why am I like covering up, or why am I letting go of my traditions and my culture because I want to feel like I blend in? I was like, at the end of the day, I'm really not, because I always tell myself I can't blend in here, but I also can't when I go back to Mexico. It's like you're not part of here, but you're not part of there, because you never really can be. And that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to join the folklorico class, and I'm going to, wear my colors proudly. And that's when I started doing a lot more, talking to different students, like, hey, we're Latinos. We need to make sure that we get ourselves to college, and motivating my classmates. And when I talk about culture, it's like I'm so proud of my culture now that I always like to bring that up, because I know that there's a lot of kids right now who are struggling with that. Like, should I be super proud of my culture like I want to be, or should I not so much so that people don't see me weird? Or there's a lot of unknowns. And so I like to share that, even though at some point I'm like, why would I even ever hesitate to be proud of my culture? But I like to share that because it happens to a lot of young kids. And it happened to me because I was here in a new, country for the first time. And in a way, I was scared at times to show that pride.
You made an excellent point, or actually multiple excellent points. We talked about assimilation and this idea that when we start looking at the experiences of ethnic and racial minorities in the United States, regardless of whether or not someone was born in the US, there's this constant feeling of being an outsider. And this idea that, can I be proud of who I am while still identifying as American? Because when we look at the stereotypical image of what an American is, and I have my students in my introduction to sociology classes do this, define what a stereotypical American is. And it's white skin, blue or green eyes, blonde hair, male. Well, that's actually not accurate, because when we look at gender, the average American is actually female, right? When we look at the diversity of the United States, well, we can break up the diversity of the United States into the diversity of individual states. California is a majority minority state. And so this image of what it means to be the ideal American or the stereotypical American is an ever evolving concept. And we see that constant struggle within the individuals in trying to define their sense of self, because, we want to be accepted. Now, let me ask you this. I don't know much about the area, the Atwater area. I've never been. Was it a very diverse area while you were growing up?
It might have been overall, but the schools that I went to really weren't. And eventually I was able to move schools, but that was until high school. So I wouldn't be able to tell you exact numbers, but it's not as diverse as, like, say, Fresno here where I live at now. And Atwater is about an hour away from Fresno. It's a small city.
Yeah, and then that further contributes to this outsider feeling, right? Because you're looking at it saying, well, I see a few individuals who look like me, but at the same time, I want to be accepted and I want that sense of belonging. So I appreciate you sharing that experience. So let's fast forward a bit. And you study broadcast journalism, you study multimedia at Fresno State, go Bulldogs.
Yay.
Um, and you decide, okay, I've graduated. What am I going to pursue as a career? So what was your first occupation while in high school or while in college? And then after graduation, what was your first introduction to the media industry?
Yeah, well, I guess when you say what was my first occupation, my first job, um, that was Little Caesars. That was my first job in high school. I was a cash register clerk, and that was my first job, and that was just to get me through. But one of the things I do want to point out, since we got into the topic, was like the work ethic. I've always had a job. Ever since I got that job at Little Caesars to this day, I've always had a job. Never have I stopped. I mean, whatever it is that I've worked in, because I've had so many different jobs, from moving from one place, moving to college, full-time student, doing full-time, internships, and still had a, part-time or full-time job at all times. So I was always working. I think that's something that as Latinos sometimes we have to do, is you always have to work because you got to get income coming, because my parents could not afford to give me not even $1 for college. So always working, always staying busy. And then with the news world, I don't know how to tell you. Did I grow up wanting to be a news reporter? No. Did I know I was going to be a news reporter? No. Did I go into college thinking that I was going to be a reporter? No. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And that was very stressful, because I wanted to make my parents proud. I wanted to do something, but I just had no idea. I just knew I liked telling stories. I liked writing. And then I liked film. I loved making movies. In high school, I would make a whole bunch of movies all the time. So that's all I knew. And it was my junior year in college, and I still had no idea what I wanted to do. And I took a class, and it was a broadcasting class, in which I got to write a newscast and do like a story. And then I had to film it and edit it myself. And then I was like, hey, I like this. I get to tell a story. I get to film. I get to edit all in one. I was like, but I don't like being in front of the camera. That's a little too creepy. So I was like, no, that's not my thing. And then the counselor was like, academic counselor was like, oh, just, try a couple more classes. Maybe you just need to see. So I did. I continued taking classes, and then I realized, like, hey, this is really something I like. I actually like it. But still, I don't like being in front of the camera. I hate being in front of the camera. I'm a behind the camera type of person. I want to major in multimedia. But then when I did graduate with both majors, it ended up turning out that I was getting job offers as a reporter, because I put something together called a reel. So most jobs, you have to turn in a resume for jobs. For us reporters, we turn something called a reel. It's a YouTube video where you have a compilation of different reports that you've done. And so I was getting job offers for that. And so that's when I was like, well, this is what God wants me to do, then this is what I'm going to do. And I went the pathway of news. And right after college, in 2016, I grabbed the little that could fit into my car, and I moved to San Luis Obispo. Here in California, thankfully, I got so many job offers in different places like Montana and Arizona and Texas. But thankfully, I got a job in California, because, again, I'm very close to my family, and I wanted to be close to them. And yeah, I moved to San Luis Obispo. I worked there for 2 years. The toughest years of my life, because this job challenges you in so many different ways, emotionally, physically, mentally. But I got my experience. And then after those 2 years, I applied here in Fresno. And because I had an intern here, and I knew people here, and they knew about me and my work ethic and everything, they were able to hire me. And I've been here. Next month, it's going to be 2 years since I moved back to Fresno. I've only been in the news industry it's going to be 4 years.
Great, thank you. So you get the phone call, you get the invite to say, hey, come join the team. When you get the invite to join the CBS team in Fresno, what was that experience like? Did you have to interview for that position? And, were you really excited? Did you go celebrate after? Like, what's the initial reaction that you feel at that time?
Oh my God, words can't explain. Everybody who knows me knew how bad I wanted to come back to Fresno, because I'm that kind of person that gets attached easily. And so I was so attached to Fresno. I was so attached to my community. I wanted to be working for the community that helped me grow up. I mean, I wanted to work for the community where I went to college. And because here we also air in Atwater, which is only an hour away, I want to work for the community of the teachers that I grew up, in their classes. And so I was just overwhelmed. I was so excited. I was going to come home. San Luis Obispo is 4 hours away from Atwater. So I would only see my parents so often. I missed watching my little brothers grow up. I missed a very important part of their life. And so for me, it was just important to come home. And then I was like, I get to still do news, and I get to be home, and I get to be with my family. I was just so excited and so overwhelmed. And, as far as it comes to interviewing, I did drive out here for an interview, and deep down I was like, oh, they're gonna hire me. That's no issue. But it's still, I was nervous because I was like, what if they don't? But once, he gave me a call and he's like, yeah, we're offering you this, and we'd love for you to join the team. I was so excited because I already had ideas in my mind of all the things that I wanted to bring to the table, and he could tell that I was really excited to come back home, and I was part of this community too. It means a lot more when someone's from that community than someone who's just going to be here for 2 years, report, and then move on.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, as a Latina in the news industry, what does that mean to represent your community, to represent our community? I mean, that's an incredibly powerful position. I can't remember who exactly shared this quote, but you cannot be what you cannot see. And we've seen an absence of Latinos and Latinas on television screens, in movies. And so what type of, experience have you had being a Latina in this industry?
It comes with a lot of power, and a lot of responsibility, because sometimes if you're not that ethnicity, you can't know the issues that are going on. And so it comes with a lot of responsibility because I have to be the eyes and ears of my community and get the word out. And it's different because here in Fresno, we have Spanish stations. So Spanish stations can get the Spanish stories and can get, the stories to the community that Latinos need to know about. But what about the stories that non-Latinos need to know about Latinos? And that's where we come in, to be able to share stories, to be able to tell people stories, to be able to tell issues, and to be able to just kind of be, like I said, the eyes and ears of the community. I take that very, very serious because I know that there's only a little bit of us. I may be wrong. I'll have to really count down, but at the top of my head, it's only 3 of us Latinas who work in my station. And many other stations have none or 1 or 2, if anything. And years as they go by, we're getting more Latinos and more diversity into the news stations, but it's not there yet. I can say it's just a big responsibility too. It kind of falls on you. So Hispanic Heritage Month is an example. Different stations either, put it off to the side and do nothing with it, or do something with it. And that's where it came my responsibility. Okay, do I want to share the Hispanic Heritage Month stories with our community? Yes. Okay, well then I have to do the work. I have to go get interviews. I have to go get film. I have to put it together. I have to edit it. I have to produce it, everything, because no one else is going to do it like you can. And so I made sure that I did that, and I made sure I put time aside so that we can do a Hispanic Heritage Month 30-minute special to air on a weekend for our community. So it does come with a lot of work and responsibility, but I am very, very happy that we're able to do it. And I'm very, very happy that my station is willing to allow me to do things like that. And recently with the coronavirus things that have been happening, they even opened up on our website a tab with news in specifically just Spanish. And that was awesome because that's something they never had before. So I appreciate my station for doing that and for being able to provide for those who don't speak English. It just means a lot to me that they're doing that.
That's amazing. It shows the importance and the power of inclusion. This idea that when you start to diversify the populations within schools or the workplace and include the stories of other individuals who have oftentimes been ignored or excluded, right? The fact that now the company that you work for has this Spanish tab, right, is incredibly powerful. And for a lot of individuals, perhaps in our generation, I'm 33, so I don't think I'm much older than you. We may not necessarily appreciate it as much as perhaps our parents or older siblings, right? Because they grew up in an era where if you spoke Spanish, you were pretty much on your own. right? If you spoke Mandarin or any other language, yeah, you're pretty much on your own. And now we're starting to see greater access, and we still have plenty of room for growth, but greater opportunities for inclusion. Now, I'm getting a notification from Zoom. Apparently now they're cutting meetings to like 40 minutes or something like that. So it shows a 4-minute countdown. But I wanted to see if you have any parting words for my students, any advice that you can provide them as they're selecting a major, as they're going through college, and perhaps pursuing a career in journalism or on the news.
Yeah. Well, I'll start off with a quick little advice for people in general, and then I'll move on to if they want to pursue media. One thing that I always say to people is just doesn't matter what you do. It really doesn't matter what career you take, as long as you are doing something that is going to give back to the community. Be someone that is going to make a difference, and be someone that people are going to notice their hard work, their kindness. And it's just in any job you're able to give back, and I think that that's very important, that no matter what you do is that you give back, that you're kind, that you're genuine, that you're humble, and that you are not selfish at all, but always willing to give back to others. So whatever job you do, if you can do that and you can be happy, then there you go. And for those who do want to pursue something in media, it's a tough job, but it's very rewarding. There is a lot of great things. Now we're moving into social media a lot. A lot of it is online. So there's opportunities so much bigger now than just like the, on TV type of thing. So you can look at so many different options. I mean, they have so many different jobs, whether it's online, their social media manager, be on air, weather, sports, producers, directors. I mean, there's a whole team. So there's a lot of jobs. And for anybody who has any specific questions, please reach out to me, because I will make sure that I get those answers for you. And if I don't have them, like, I'll look for someone, because it is a really, really great career to work in, and it's really, really rewarding. You guys can find me on social media. All my social media handles, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, are at Fab Ramirez TV.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You did a phenomenal job answering the questions. I wish we had more time. I didn't know that there was a timer on Zoom that they're enforcing now. But thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
No, yeah, thank you. Nobody wants to hear any more about me. That's good enough.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks. Same to you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.